was very proud of the fact that, given enough time, I can fix anything. Well, now I was faced with something I couldn't fix.
And if you read my book as a widow, I can guarantee that you will see progress. The whole world was on this merry-go-round, going round and round and busy, 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 and I was standing there looking at them like, what are you doing? Why?
For widowers and widows to watch this, I think Tom and Ferree had like a perfect balance of humor and just like goofiness, but like, and also real depth. Like you could tell, like they understood what they were talking about. They were very, just real and authentic. Like it'll be a really encouraging episode. I think.
Yeah. Well, they both got married. They both lost their spouses, and it was a wonderful conversation where we talked about, some of the hardest things of walking that section of road of having to say goodbye to your spouse, and then also what life looks like on the other side.
With remarriage and walking through the grieving process. Yeah.
It's a great conversation. If you know anybody who has recently, buried their spouse, this would be a fantastic episode to share. Please meet our friends Tom and Ferree Hardy. This podcast is sponsored by my friends at Azure Standard. A while back, I had a chance to sit down with the founder, David Stelzer, right here at the table, and we had a great conversation. I love the Azure story. They started out as farmers back in the 70s, and I think in 1987, they began a nationwide food distribution company. And guys, they are non-GMO, organic. They do it right. They do it so well. And you can get a truck to drop food right in your town. Check them out at azurestandard.com and tell them Marlon and Plain Values sent you.
So hold my hand, think of me sweetly with a graveyard flower.
It is a stinking joy to have you guys here. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Tom and Ferree Hardy. You've written for Plain Values for 10 years.
I know. Yeah.
I don't remember how we got connected the very first time.
Well, it almost did not happen.
Okay, tell me more, because I don't remember.
Well, what happened was I got an email, and it might have been in my junk mail, and I was going to throw it out. All it said was, my publisher would like to talk to you about writing for our magazine. And I thought, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Your publisher wants me to pay him to write for his magazine. I thought it was one of those junk, spammy things. And there was something about it, though, that wasn't quite spam. It looked like it was a little more personal. And so I thought, well, what could it hurt? I'll give them my phone number. I can block them if it turns out weird, And so it was Sue Wengert.
Yep.
And so I emailed her back. I said, yeah, have them call me sometime. And I think it was December maybe, or early January. And you actually called. And we started talking and laughing, and that was it. But you found out, well, what you told me was, you said, I've got this magazine, goes out to Amish. I can do pretty much whatever I want. I've got missions covered. I've got orphans covered. And then God got me with that verse in James about take care of the widows and the orphans. And I don't have anything for widows. I need something for widows. Can you do something for widows? I'm like, oh, yeah, let's give it a try.
That whole thing happened. Would that have been in 2014 or 15, right?
Well, it was the end of 2015 because my first article then was April of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I brought a copy of it.
did you really?
Look
oh
how
my goodness.
cute. It was because the name of my book was Postcards from the Widow's Path, and so we went with that sort of graphic. It
Yeah.
looks like it's on a little airmail postcard. It's got a little stamp on it, and it was just so cute.
That's so cool. Seth, that would have been Isaac.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaac would have busted that out, put that together for us.
Yeah.
So my
it
goodness.
was like that for a while. It has since changed
Yeah.
and grown, like the
Wow.
magazine has grown, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know I'll say this again, but I hope you know how much we've enjoyed
Yeah, it's been great.
these 10 years. Pop passed away, my dad passed away in 2011.
Okay.
And it's a little embarrassing when I think about it that it took me, 4 years, 3 or 4 years to really notice how many widows and, widowers that there are. And when I started digging into it, I think I was, the only number that I remember was 700,000.
a year.
A year
Yeah.
that happens to every single year. That number, I believe, is in this country alone, I think.
Yeah, that it's about 2,000 a day here in the United States. So around the world, multiply that over and over. And I am the same way because, my first husband, pastor, and we had widows in our church, and you ask them, how are you? I'm fine. And then, oh, good. Whew,
Right.
good.
Check the box.
Right. And you check the box.
Yeah.
We checked with
And-
them. They're fine.
Yep.
And yeah,
And that's
now we
what
know.
we found with our ministry with, Facebook groups and all that, is many churches just either feel under-equipped or just don't realize what they've, the orphan or the widows that they have in the church, and struggle with how to minister to them. It's difficult.
It's fascinating, and I don't think I mean that in a great way, but it's fascinating how we as individuals and corporately as a church can completely forget an entire group of people. And it's a command. I mean, the Lord says, hey, take care of the widows and the orphans. And we're too busy and we're too focused on ourselves, which is obviously the sinful nature kicking into play there. But it's so easy to just, like you said, hey, how are you doing? Which, by the way, is not the greatest
It's a horrible question.
It's a horrible question to ask because we know how they're doing. Typically, we know how they're doing.
Well, some of us do.
And we'd done that years ago at a CNMA church that I attended before we got married. We were looking to come up with a mission statement, and so we did a survey of the church, and we were kind of blown away with, like, widows and also single or divorced women who came to church, but who didn't have the leadership of a husband at home or a non-believer, didn't have control of, some ladies going, I would love to tithe, but my husband won't let me. And we were really surprised that a good 50% of our church was made up of women that fell into that category, and went, wow, and we're not ministering to them. So
Half.
yeah, it was interesting. So
That is.
and so we did things like the deacons would
high.
get together, and if a lady had a problem with, I can remember changing fuel pumps on cars and, issues like that there, that once we realized it, we tried to minister, and the pastor's wife would help some of them with their finances.
Yep.
Pull them aside and help them work out a budget and all. But you had to kind of come to that realization first,
Wow. Well, let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back. Tell us about your family. Tell us about your growing up years.
Growing up years?
Yeah.
My growing up years?
Yes.
I feel like I had an enchanted childhood. Up to the age of 14, we lived with my grandparents in a big old farmhouse in Wisconsin. Had a pond. We went swimming morning, noon, and night. 5 miles out of town. So I love rural areas. And coming to Ohio, when we first moved to Geauga County, and I loved it up there, but I've lived in Morrow County, Central Ohio, farming community there, and then in Dayton. So it's actually in Ohio longer than I was in Wisconsin. But those rural roots, that's where I belong,
Did you grow up with a bunch of brothers and sisters?
I was the oldest, and I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. 10 years between me and my sister. So lots of fun things. We had an old barn. I don't know why we're still alive. Tunneling through the hay mows and all the farm equipment and swinging through the hay bale and rope in the top of from the rafters of the top of the barn up in the hayloft and swimming in that pond without a lifeguard.
Yep.
Riding our bikes. We would ride our bikes all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was your dad a farmer?
No, he was not. Both of my parents grew up in Chicago. Very metropolitan. They met in art school. And my mother's parents moved to Wisconsin, gave up a little grocery store that they had, moved up to Wisconsin. I don't know that my grandpa had any farming background. My grandmother grew up on a rice farm in Arkansas.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. So they both got into farming. My grandpa had a small herd of dairy cows. I remember the day he sold them. We watched out the window as they loaded the cows into the truck. So we were just, on this farm. He had probably about 200 acres that he rented out then to other farmers for them to do the fields. And he kind of semi-retired. But he was stuck there with us 4 little maniacs. And then my father worked as what they called photo engraving, which is a form of printing. No longer, it's obsolete now. Computers
came
took
along.
over that, yeah. So he commuted to a larger town about 40 miles away. And then when I was 16, they decided they were done with that, and they moved us to that town.
Mm-hmm.
And
you just said that you remember the cows being loaded onto the trucks?
Yep.
Was it a hard thing for you to see the cows?
No, because they were stinky.
Oh.
And I was like 4 years old. And so you go in the barn and you're always, kind of peeled back against the wall in case the cow lets go.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Yeah, I get that. I've talked to a handful of farmers who had to sell, the the herd.
Oh, yeah.
And they wept.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if
It's-
that's been your life, that's, yeah.
It's brutal. Mm-hmm. It's brutal on them.
Yeah, dairies. Her uncle had dairy, and also up in New York, there's a family that goes to our church, has like 10 kids, and they had to sell the family farm. We're in the process of it there, just because you don't get any more for 100 weight of milk now than you did 25 years ago, and
Right.
it's just gotten very expensive.
Right. And the feed and fertilizer costs are astronomical. So how did you and Bruce meet?
Bruce and I met at Moody Bible Institute. We were both students there.
Did you go directly into the pastorate? Well, I'm sorry. I should ask you first. Did you get married right after school?
No, we started dating right the end of his senior year, and then I broke up with him over the summer, and he got engaged to somebody else, but he kept thinking about me because I lived near Neenah, Wisconsin, and whenever you pass a manhole on the street, it's always from Neenah Foundry. And so he knew that he could not marry this other girl if he's still being reminded about me. So he came to see me, and I still wasn't ready to, start dating again or anything. I had too much on my plate. But he broke off the engagement. And then about a year after that, we started to write, and shortly after that, got engaged, and shortly after that, got married.
And then he was a pastor.
Then at our wedding, some of the guests referred him to a church. He put in a resume as a youth pastor at Riverview Church in Ohio. And about 2 months after we were married, we came out here.
When you say Riverview, do you mean down by Coshocton?
No, it's in Geauga County.
Just above Chagrin Falls.
Just
Okay.
north of Chagrin Falls.
Okay.
Right on 306.
There's a different school down there that's also called...
Yeah, I think there's
exactly
a lot
the
of
same.
Riverviews.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started out there. We had one baby there. Then we moved to Warsaw, Indiana. He went to Grace Seminary a little bit. We had another baby there. And that was in the 1980s. And the recession made it very difficult. But after that, then a church in Ashtabula, Ohio, which had just started from a Bible study, they called him to be their pastor. And it was, we were living pretty much at like poverty level, but we didn't know it. We didn't know we could have applied to food stamps and all of that. But so getting $1,000 a month paycheck was a big pay raise. And we thought, we can live on that. So we moved up to Ashtabula and started that little church.
So how many kids did you and Bruce have together?
3.
3? Mm-hmm. And are they all grown and married and...
They are all, they're really old now. Don't let them listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. How many grandkids do you guys
We
have?
only have one,
Okay.
and she is 9 years old now.
Yeah.
And she got to finally visit us in New York this summer, so that was a big thing for Grandma.
So, Tom,
Oh,
how did you grow up?
I grew up in the Adirondacks, up in the mountains, and the town that I'm in, very small, the paper mill town. That's pretty much it around there. But Lake George, which is a gorgeous lake, and Lake Champlain, and just the mountains. So I grew up bouncing around the fields. Back then, just long as you came home for dinner. Mother didn't worry about things, or she said there's probably a lot of boy things that went on that it's better off I didn't know about anyways. And then the neighbor or the surrounding fields around our house, we had a view of the valley, was all dairy. And so I used to hang around the dairy barns all the time. And but yeah, it was just a very nice rural setup there, and we're back there now, but with about a 20-year gap in there. But
Siblings?
One, yeah, a younger brother.
Okay.
About 4 years younger.
And did you go to school to become a pastor as well?
No. I went to Bob Jones for about a year and a half, and then went to Word of Life Bible Institute. It's about a half an hour from us, that Word of Life youth ministry and camps and all there. So that was always nice to have close by there. So they would bring in Bible teachers. We had somebody that would cover theology and Bible survey, but they would bring in really some big guns. I mean, we had like Charles Ryrie teaching us 1 Corinthians and Joe Stoll teaching us Philippians, and they'd bring in some very unique but very, very good theologians and all that to teach us. So that was a privilege. And then, but I was back in a paper mill. I spent the last 40 years in that career. Mm-hmm. So she took a little step down from a pastor to a paper mill engineer. But
so you met your wife a long time ago, right? I mean, yeah.
From our church, her mom was our organist. Mm-hmm. She was a little older than me, had babysitted for me, very attractive, lady. And, we had a boy. Mm-hmm. So we've got 4 between us here. But
How long were you guys married in your first?
I was married for 22 years.
Okay.
We were only married like 10. About 10 years or so. Mm-hmm.
So, can I ask how they passed?
Marilyn died of ovarian cancer.
Okay.
It's kind of about a 15-month trek there, and she'd had a lot of difficulty having Aaron. She didn't have Aaron until she was like 39. She was a professional, was a banker, vice president of loan operations and all, but when she finally, after numerous operations, was able to finally get pregnant there, she just retired, rolled up her sleeves, and became a mom.
Yeah.
But, cancer is very insidious, and some of the things you got to go through to try to fight it, it's difficult. But.
Yeah.
And Bruce?
So Bruce died, well, actually, Marilyn died in December of 2000, and Bruce died in February of 2000, the day before my 44th birthday. Didn't make for a very good birthday. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even have a party that day. But he actually had a brain aneurysm, so it was instant. Life changed forever in an instant.
Yeah. I have a hunch that you guys have talked about this quite a bit. Is there a better way to go through that process? One, to have time to try to prepare and try to, talk through things, or is it easier in a sense for it to be a shock, a very quick thing?
Well, what I would talk about with so many people, Bruce's friends and I all agreed this was really easy and nice for him, but it sucked for us.
Yeah, because it was totally fine one day, and the next day it's over.
We're talking one moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that first year was very numb, very just, you'd wake up every morning and then remember all over again. Mm-hmm. He's gone. He's gone. Did not get to say goodbye. about a year and a half after that, someone suggested to me that I write him a letter to say goodbye. And so when I was ready, I did that, and that was a really good thing. That
Just to
helped me
get
a
all
lot.
that out.
Oh, yeah. I told him everything that had gone on the last year and a half, and I closed with saying, you know, I wish we had never had to go through this, but I am so grateful for the years that we had together, you know.
How old were your children when he passed?
My oldest was sophomore at Moody, so she must have been 19. And then Lisa was 16 and Brad was 13.
What goes through your mind in those, those first couple weeks and then a month and then, the couple months as you're trying to acclimate to that whole thing? What goes through your mind when you look at your children?
Well, for me, I don't think anything was going through my mind. I was just trying to breathe, really. I look back and I wish I had been a little more proactive in dealing with the kids, in trying to find counsel. I did, put out a few feelers for some Christian counselors, but didn't get any feedback, or the one that I really wanted, was not available, and he was very far away. So we didn't have much of anything in the way of counsel. And then being the pastor's wife, the congregation, they were still all mourning. They were all in shock. And me as the pastor's wife, I must have had my act together, and they thought I'd be fine. And of course, I told them I was fine. So it was it's a very lonely, lonely time.
There wasn't some of the material back then, too. We've been involved with Grief Share, with a couple churches and Grief Share groups, and kind of leading those. And also they have a grieving during the holidays that we've even done since up in New York. But that kind of material, I can remember the first time we went through that, I'm like, boy, I wish I had this back then. And I probably would have taken a little bit different tact with my kid, even with your kids and stuff. But, because they were going through it too. But it's there's a little more material and some knowledge out there and wisdom that we just weren't equipped with back then.
How old was Aaron?
He was
10.
Yeah, he was 10 when he just turned 10. He was 9 when she got sick. And
So I just had some other friends on, and Zach lost his wife 3-4 years ago, I think, and they had 3 children as well, also teenagers. And he talked about the same thing, where he was just trying to survive. And he said, Marlon, I regret so many things that I should have done, different or better. And I just cannot imagine. I know that when my dad passed, Lisa has told me that I was in a bit of a fog for a year. I think it was probably about a year. And I don't remember. She was parenting, I think, alone. And it makes me sad that I just kind of, mentally checked out in a way.
So I think guys dive into their work, which is very easy to do in a paper mill that's a 24/7 operation.
You just pour yourself right in.
And I was fortunate that I had my parents around to take Aaron places. I mean, they would take him on trips all over the place. And also Marilyn's family was there, and a bunch of sisters and nieces and all that were, so I had a lot of support and time. We could talk about that. I don't think, you were able to tap into sometimes. So.
Well, you knew ahead of time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having that 15, 18 months, that was a process that, I mean, you could even see Aaron, and we probably did it purposely there, where he was able to kind of disconnect a little from Mom and connect a little more with me before, she died. And, but yeah, we had time to be able to do that kind of stuff.
What was the hardest thing from a very, very practical, standpoint for you? You're used to doing a lot of, the maintenance and changing oil in the cars, and that's a guy thing. That makes total sense. What was the hardest thing for you to adjust to being a single dad now and, trying to keep a handle on things?
Yeah, just probably keeping him fed. We ate a lot of SpaghettiOs and a lot of and a lot of packaged meals.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was a lot of it. And it was he was going. We had homeschooled him for up until about third grade, and then up near Word of Life was a church that a lot of the Word of Life folks went to. They had a Christian school, so he ended up going to that just to also give him some interaction with other kids. Interacting with Mom and Dad forever just probably isn't the best, but that would gave him a lot of support too, and so I had people, really alongside me a lot from church and mountainside and all that.
Do you still talk with Aaron about his mom?
Yeah, I mean we're very open about it there, and I'll send old pictures his way or something there that I think he's become a little more interested too as he's grown a little older. He's in his 30s now, but and so there's we've talked being 9 or 10. There's not a whole lot that he remembers. Some of it, the pictures will kind of bring some memories, and I just try to fill in the gaps. But yeah, it's a little more difficult being that young when you lose them.
How about you, Ferree? What were the hardest things? Like for an example, my mom didn't know how to fill her gas tank, and because Pop did everything, he just took care of all those things, and that was a bit of a wake up call for my brother and I, because we didn't really realize that. Was there something like that for you that?
I think the hardest thing for me was that my schedule rotated around him. Everything was around Bruce, so everything was around the church. As far as cars and stuff, he had a good friend who was a car mechanic who took care of all that for me. But yeah, it was just loss of structure. We grieve over a lot of different things. Loss of a future, loss of a person, but loss of structure. Some people have loss of faith. And all those things are things that we grieve over. But for me, I think it was just loss of structure and not having him to ground me, to be that anchor, to know what to do next. It was just, I would cook supper and nobody wanted to eat anyway because there's that empty chair at the table. So I'd just kind of throw money at the kids and they'd go get McDonald's or whatever. It's just, yeah, it's just, there's a great big void there.
How has your perception of life changed after walking these hard sections of
well, I will
life?
tell you, I was just thinking about that. I've thought about that a lot. My values totally changed. And I would say before, I'm just naturally very task-oriented. And, man, I don't know how I accomplished all I did. I was working, helping with the church, with junior church, with ladies' Bible studies, all kinds of stuff there. I was working full-time, and I was working on a bachelor's degree, finishing up my bachelor's. How did I do all that?
How soon after he passed did you do that?
I did that 2 years before he passed away.
Okay.
2 years before he passed away. And then after he passed away, it was like just my whole values changed around quite a bit in not reevaluating how busy I was and what I was going to do, and they've continued to change too. I'm much more. I'm not interested in careers or material things so much anymore. It's just, what can we do with people? How can we connect in this moment? It's living in the moment a whole lot more than living for getting something accomplished. And distinctly recall feeling like the whole world was on this merry-go-round, going round and round and busy, 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 and I was standing there looking at them like, what are you doing? Why? Why are you doing all that? What does it matter? Mm-hmm. A lot of good thoughts like that.
Any thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, after Marilyn died, I guess I went through, and that kind of that whole process with her sick there, it kind of challenged my faith too. I guess because in a paper mill, I'm in maintenance and engineering, and living there quite often when things break, and I come home when the paper mill runs again. But was very proud of the fact that given enough time, I can fix anything. Well, now I was faced with something I couldn't fix, and I spent a lot of time on the internet and a lot of time researching all this. Doctors would comment, "How do you know all these things?" Because I would get into it and trying to find something that we could do, but that was ovarian cancer is very insidious and uncurable. So that had, that was kind of a shift in that realization, and also just realizing that I probably spent time in the mills that was somewhat optional too. I would be following up on something, and I spent more time or wasted more time in the mill than I really needed to. And so, when we married, I'm like, I've got to do better at that, which I haven't. That's what 24/7 manufacturing demands of you.
That's a topic for later,
yes,
maybe.
But God has blessed me with two wives who understood that I come home when the paper mill runs, and because paper mills have ruined a lot of marriages. But it's been, kind of an eye opener too when we. I appreciated her call to write her book, and that's been a ministry that I just financed. She's the one that had the Facebook, groups and all that, and but I've always appreciated watching her work with people and has included me on some of it, and it's been very enjoyable, just ministering that way. And even when we first published the first book there, I think we finally found a publisher in Dayton, and so we met at the publisher so that I could announce that we were shutting the mill down, and I was without a job now, and then we just felt that the Lord
Let
wanted
me
us to keep
explain
going.
that. So we,
I guess she's got details.
we have this book, and
She's been working on for quite some time.
I worked on that book for 6 years. And during that 6-year time, the publishing industry totally changed because we didn't know if there would even be print books anymore. Everything was coming out digital. And the editors that I had talked to at a writers' conference who all wanted a book proposal from me, when I finally got the book ready for that, they were all gone. Nobody was working. So, lo and behold, God provided a local printer who was just getting into self-publishing. And, there's all kinds of printing houses online that you can self-publish with. And I just could not send it into cyberspace, my little precious book. I just could not push the button and not know where it was going. So we found this local printer, toured the place. They had graphic artists on board. They had editors and everything. And so we're going to go sign this contract, pay them to print this book. I was working at a library. He's at the paper mill. We met after work in the parking lot. He rolls down his window. I got out the car. I walked up to his car, and he goes, "Do you want the bad news now or later?"
Oh, no.
Like, what? What? And he says, "They're shutting the paper mill down. I won't have a job." And I said, "Well, then we just may as well turn around and go home. We can't print this book. Why spend thousands of dollars to do this when we might need that?" So he said, no. He said, "I don't care if I'm working in a gas station. We're going to print this book." So we went in, signed on the dotted line. 2 weeks after that, God provided him not one, but 2 job offers in South Carolina, where we were never going to go south. But
She told me Dayton was as far south as we were moving.
Never say never. And so there we are, moving south.
I think I
with
remember.
With a book contract.
I think I remember when you shared with us that you were moving, and yeah.
When we were moving back, we've moved so many times. It's
I spent 42 years in Ticonderoga, and then I married her, and we've moved like every 7 years since.
So how long have you guys been married now?
23
Yeah, 23
years.
years.
23 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
When's your anniversary?
May 26th.
Okay.
She makes me use my password, so I remember.
Tell everybody that.
I have to change it now.
That's the. That was fantastically funny. Okay.
But she had already had a ministry with the Facebook groups, and it was just, it was a blessing to me to see all the stuff going on
for widows since
while she was working on the book. And, it just impressed me that the internet had allowed her. I mean, you mentioned to me one time she thought about being a missionary when she was in Moody. But then, married Bruce and went into the pastorate. But the internet allowed her to be a worldwide missionary. She had a widow out in Vanuatu. That's a little atoll in the Pacific Island, way out near the Bikini Islands, And she got pictures from the widows group in Africa, that had been put together and stuff. And so, she was able to reach out all over the world with these Facebook groups and kind of be a worldwide missionary sitting in, our home.
That's amazing.
And that's it's allowed with the Zoom
Yeah, I think
counseling
God
she does
just
now,
has a
and
really
just
good sense of humor. It's like, Africa.
So the book was just something that was needed, That's,
Yeah.
and she worked hard on it.
This episode of the Plain Values podcast is being brought to you by my friends at Kentucky Lumber. Derek and I were talking this morning, and he shared a story about how they like to do business. And they like to do business with people that are like them. And they like to be treated in a way that they treat their own customers. He told me about a customer of theirs that he had to fire. And this was not going the way that it typically does. And this guy was not being happy with anything that they did, and nothing was good enough. And finally, Derek said, you know what? You've disrespected my team enough, and I think we're done. And so you can go find your lumber someplace else. And the attitude and the heart behind the way that Derek sees the world is exactly the way that I see the world, and I have a hunch you might as well. If you call Kentucky Lumber, just know that they might fire you if you treat them poorly. I'm kidding, of course, but they will treat you with the utmost respect because it's how they want to be treated. And I think there's a golden rule thing in there somewhere. But if you need anything at all to do with any, lumber, wood flooring, wood siding, any type of wood product that has character just baked into it and a great team to match, call my friends at Kentucky Lumber. You can find them at drywallhaters.com. Now, you mentioned a little bit of a crisis of faith. Did you guys deal with the big question of, how can God still be good if I'm finding myself in the middle of this? I mean, effectively, it's a hell of loss and grief.
Or my challenge was, like I say, Marilyn had a lot of female problems with endometriosis and a number of surgeries, and it took many years for her to finally get pregnant and have this child. I mean, she had all her nieces and nephews, and we had a fortune in toys and teddy bears and everything else that she played with all the nieces and that. So we were all equipped when Aaron finally came. But she worked so hard and rolled up her sleeves and retired and homeschooled for a number of years, and just delighted to finally have this child. And he's like 9 years old when she was diagnosed, and so that was a real challenge as to why is all this happening, especially to her. And why is a 9-year-old losing his mom?
Yeah.
Right.
I love what somebody said, that for the Christian, this life on earth is as close to hell as you will ever get. For the non-Christian, it's as close to heaven as they will ever get. That was really sobering to me, but I totally agree. We do experience a little bit of hell. For me, my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. I didn't even know if Bruce was in heaven, if it exists. It did not feel like there was anything out there. And I did find a grief group at a different church, and one of the dear little ladies in there, she was the pastor's wife, and she gave me that verse in Isaiah that says, "Your maker is your husband." And at about the same time as when I learned there's 2,000 women that are widowed every day here in the United States, I thought, one little verse for 2,000 women a day, I didn't appreciate that at all. And I didn't appreciate the verse either. Your maker is your husband. You're not doing, I wasn't impressed.
I'm sorry to laugh.
It's okay because it should be something that we can laugh at. Mm-hmm. And I think God understands that. And it really, really, really hurt because inside, I guess, a wounded child, but I had this picture in my head of my happy childhood, and that Bruce and I were just little 4-year-olds outside playing in the Kool-Aid kid yard, swinging on the swing, and God came out of his house next door. Great big boots was all I saw, and he came into our yard, and he swooped up Bruce, took Bruce away, cuddled him up, went off into his house next door. But with his fist, he smacked me, and I went flying off the swing and landed in the gravel, got gravel embedded in my knees and my palms. And I was just so hurt, so hurt. So when I found when that lady tried to comfort me with, your maker is your husband, I'm like, it's not happening for me. But I thought, if he is my husband, I have a question for him. And so in my mind, I went over to the house next door and I started knocking on the door. Where are you? Where are you? And there was no answer. Well, it took about 3 days for Jesus to rise from the dead, right? And it was about 3 days of me knocking on that door. I mean, I was hanging on the doorknob saying, please, please, please help. And the only thing that came to me was just this tiny little thought. Why don't you read the book of Ruth? I have more than one verse in the Bible. I have a whole book about widows. And I was like, Ruth, are you kidding me? That's a love story. I'm not going to torture myself with a love story. But that thought just kept, the hound of heaven. And so I finally decided, looked at 4 chapters. How long is it going to take? 20 minutes? I'll read it, get it over with. And I was hooked within the first 10 verses. And that started like this obsession with the book of Ruth, because there are so many layers, so many ways I saw my situation, all widows' situations. God knows widows. And he chose to tell us a story of 2 women that we could relate to. You got Naomi full of despair, Ruth full of determination, and the rest of us falling in the middle on good days. So that's what started it off, was that empty prayers are hitting the ceiling, what's happening? Nothing. And knocking on the door.
How long did it take for joy to come back around?
Joy. I remember shortly after Bruce died, and I looked out my kitchen window, and there was still snow on the ground, and crocuses were popping up through it. And it was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. So if you call that joy, I think joy is just a deep thing that sustains you and gives you hope and might not really be defined by Christmas carols and that sort of thing. It's just a deep thing. What do you think, Mr. Tom?
I don't know. It was a long couple of years before I met you.
Long couple of years. And
Yeah.
then you found joy when you found me.
Well, that's that was part of it. Yeah, that's
Aw.
Do you feel that it's a very different journey for a man to get back to joy than it is for a lady?
oh. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, like I say, I had a lot of support, but I just didn't have somebody really walking by my side. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, after we met there, of course, we were 512 miles exactly from my doorstep to her doorstep in Cleveland away. So we burned up. Back then, you could buy a $35 1,000-minute Walmart phone card. So we did most of our talking, discussing, dating, by phone.
So hold on. I've even got it on my list here. How did you guys meet? We haven't gotten there. So you guys lived 500 miles apart.
Well, she told you your email was kind of sketchy. Well, we met on the internet, so
Oh, my goodness.
It could have been pretty sketchy too.
I had a girlfriend. This girl had cystic fibrosis. She, at the time, she was a veteran. She was 35. They did not live that long at that point. She was fearless. She would do anything. She lived to the hilt. And she was like one of the very few people that were not afraid of me. A lot of times people will treat a widow like it's contagious. They're scared. They don't know what to say. They're afraid they'll make her cry or something. So they avoid her. But Laura was a great friend. And she took my picture and uploaded it onto a Christian Singles site.
Did you give her the okay to do that, or did she just go do it?
And we had gone out for dinner, and then we were back at her place, and I had found this site, and I said, "Oh, should I do this? Should I do this?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm so scared," and she's like, "What do you have to lose? You've already lost everything." Click. And there she goes. And there I am. And then a couple weeks later, you got on at the same time.
I didn't. Yeah, because there was we didn't spend any money on each other. There was like a 15-day trial or something. Yeah.
Cheapskates.
And I didn't even have a picture on it.
No, he did not have a picture.
No.
No. So
did you see him first, or did you see her first?
She reached out
he
to me
had
first.
no picture. So
Yeah.
he saw my picture. It was really cute picture of me.
But that was
Doesn't
after you
happen
emailed
very
me.
often.
But you
So,
were taking
yeah.
a total. You're taking a total turkey shot here. I mean, you have no idea this guy could.
Because you just emailed me, do you know where Schroon Lake is or something?
Well, that is another thing. I mean, there were so many things that, like coincidences, divine appointments that God had lined up for us. So it just so happened that I went out to Word of Life, and then when I came back, I did a search for widowers between ages 40 and 50, and I didn't put a mileage thing on it for some reason. And then his name came up, and I knew where Ticonderoga was because I'd just been in that area. And so I just said, hey, ever hear of Scroon Lake, New York? I was just there last week. And then
I said, yeah.
we just
kid goes to school there.
emailed. We just emailed.
Well, the Lord
on
had
that
prepared
a little bit.
back in what, 75? You were a counselor?
Yes, I had been there
She'd been
in
to
1970.
Scroon Lake, knew where Ticonderoga was.
76.
76?
Yes,
Because
for the bicentennial.
back then the Bible Institute was just starting up, was very small. And, by the time I went there in the 80s, all students were camp counselors also in the summer. But I don't think they had enough there. So they were using Moody and some other schools there as counselors. So she spent a soggy summer out there in the
Soggy
Adirondacks.
summer out there, which is why I broke up with Bruce.
Okay.
But anyway,
So she
does
knew where it
that
was
answer
anyways.
your question, how we met? We
Well,
met on the internet.
But then she disappeared for a couple months, and I didn't know who you were because her internet name was Freebie, but I didn't know, where she was, and then name, address, any of that kind of stuff. I guess
Well, there were
somebody
creepy,
kind of freaked
there
her out
were
or something,
creepy
yeah.
people on there too. So
you didn't get back to me until my
kinda
birthday. You
disappeared.
sent me an email and said happy birthday.
I said happy birthday.
Yep. And I'm like, who are you? I need a little more information. And actually, I had a big capital project at that time with my paper company, and so my Rockwell Automation was in Cleveland, and I had to be doing a lot of traveling, so I kind of made it a habit of passing through Cleveland, and we got I went out there for training. There was kind of an option. I could either train in November, I could train in February because I had a 2-part project. Mm-hmm. And so one of her emails, she was telling me about a date she had with a guy in Columbus. And I'm like, I didn't realize she was dating already, so maybe I need to get out there and throw my name in a hat, So I decided November was better than waiting to February. So I went out there for a week and showed up on a Monday there. I think you were finishing up your finals on something at Kent State or something.
Yeah, it was right after Thanksgiving. I had a horrible professor at Kent State. I was doing graduate work at Kent State. Horrible man, and I don't care if he hears this or not. But I don't remember what his name was anyway. But yeah. So our final exam, we all went in for the final exam, and we sit down, get our pencils out, and then he tells us, oh, let's do an oral exam. And so it had to, and not a dental exam, oral speaking exam. So we had to give him our answers in front of everybody.
But she had, I knew this
survived.
We were emailing, so I knew this was happening.
Yeah. So we had set up our very first phone call to find out if I survived
Yeah, we hadn't phoned
this
yet. Okay.
exam. And that was our first phone call.
Yeah.
So you go to Cleveland in November early
Yeah.
to get your hat in the ring.
Yeah, well, he was paying to send me out there to do the training.
He just
and then I called her
happened to be
Monday
there.
night.
And so we're going to call.
Well, there was a reason I was there instead of February, but it's,
So he happens to, we have our first phone call. And you don't know what somebody's voice is going to sound like over the phone, right? I mean, he could have been talking like this. And that would have been over.
Game over.
Game over.
not that there's anything wrong with all the people that talk like this. Huh?
No,
But,
nothing wrong with them, but they're just not for me. So we're having a nice talk. I'm thinking, I'm talking to this nice man. He's up in the Adirondack Mountains, probably has a flannel plaid shirt on. And then he tells me he's in Cleveland.
As in Euclid, yeah.
And I should have had red flags going off, like stalker flags, right? But I just thought that was the funniest thing. And
Well, there was silence for a minute because I was like, she survived her final and everything. I said, boy, we ought we ought to have dinner and celebrate that sometime. And she's, yeah. I said, well, how about tomorrow night? Because I'm in, Euclid in Cleveland there. And there's kind of total silence for a while.
You totally got her on the spot.
Yeah.
Put her in a pickle. I love it. So
now I did find out that I couldn't have a date Tuesday night because she had a date Tuesday night. So I had to have a date Wednesday night, and she had another date Thursday night. So after the first date, I had to move my flight Friday so I could get a second date in because she had them lined up.
different guys?
Oh, yeah.
Different guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ferree.
Marlon.
Wow.
I hadn't had a date for 20 some years, okay?
Yeah.
When it rains, it pours. That's just the way it
That is too funny.
Yeah. It
So-
just happened because God has a sense of humor and he wanted it on this podcast. Thank you very much.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I almost called you Bruce. I'm sorry. Tom, how has your second marriage been different than what you imagined in your mind?
Oh, what you imagined.
Oh, well, like I say, I probably would have spent the last 65 years in the Adirondacks, but I married her. And when I got to Ohio, it was just a little flat for me. I'm used to the mountains and stuff, and that was a little unnerving. But we've and then South Carolina was probably even flatter. That's just a big old sandbar. Mm-hmm. But it's been interesting there. That's and now we're back. The Lord provided an opportunity. My dad hadn't passed at that point, but he was getting real sick, and now I take care of Mom, and so he opened that door. But it's been quite a ride. But I like I say, the ministry that she's been in and being involved in the grief share and just working with people in the different churches and stuff, that's been a blessing. I don't know that any of that, would have come about. And so that just realization of how people are hurting and that we can do something about it, or at least come alongside. Sometimes you're not just, you just keep your mouth shut and listen or just be there. But even like she has a widows get together once a month in Ticonderoga there, and from all over the community, and a lot of them I know or knew their families and all that kind of stuff, and so they all get together and have a grand old time there. But it's cute to see.
Mm-hmm. How about you? How is this guy different, and how's
Well, for part of our marriage vows were that we would never compare. And so Tom he is very, very different from Bruce. I think a lot of people would be
Bruce was an athlete.
surprised. But bottom line is he loves the Lord, and we have such a common background. So we had so many things in common, and we both knew how to be married. We both knew how to have a good marriage. A second marriage is totally different from a first marriage. First marriage, you're growing up together. This one, you're bringing two families together, and I don't know if there's really any comparison, but I kind of did ask myself that when we were right before we got married, because I still love my first husband. And I know he still loves Marilyn. And how can you love somebody else, without feeling betrayal or anything? And I love the way Tom explained it. He said, well, when you had your first baby, you totally devoted, totally loved them. When you had your second baby, did that take away anything from your first? What about the third one? Then did you have just, this X amount of love that you had to divide 3 ways? And it's not. Love multiplies. So that was really, really helped me having a second marriage, knowing that I still love my first husband. He still loves Marilyn. Every once in a while, I'll still catch him. He'll still catch me with a little tear running down our face, and that's okay. We get it.
Of course, when I proposed, she went upstairs and bawled.
When he proposed, I was an absolute mess.
What isn't the reaction I was thinking would be good, but that's...
Yeah, that was...
Wow.
It was such a relief. It was huge, huge relief, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How can we pray for you guys?
We've been married now 23 years, and I'm probably going to retire probably April at this point. I'll be 65 in about a couple weeks. And just pray that being together constantly will not... No. But just...
Tom, you need to come back, okay?
Oh, no. He said it out loud.
That's why we're in the Northeast, and we were talking retiring at the end of the year, and I'm like, yeah, I think you had mentioned it there. Well, so what are you going to do? You're going to blow snow, sit on the couch, stare at me? I'm like, okay, well, we'll wait until April.
Let's ease into it.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But yeah, just, where her ministry takes us and kind of where I jump. There's a couple things I'm looking into, including, getting into real estate. It just, I'll have time that I never had. I mean, even just, music and the church and stuff there. We're in a very small church, and it just needs. And so, missing prayer meeting Wednesday nights because I'm still in the mill, and many times even on Sunday, especially if I have a weekend duty, it's kind of hard to really connect on a consistent basis and work with people in the church there. So it'll be interesting. That's.
Yeah, I think we're just going through
it's a next steps thing. We're kind of we don't know what's going on yet, but
a lot of changes ahead probably, and I'll be looking. Maybe some different writing projects. Mostly, I think, just getting back in touch. I looked up the word sabbatical, and I'm kind of looking at it that way. A time of refreshment and maybe repositioning, finding out what else is there that God wants to cultivate.
Yeah. So I lied. I said that was my last question.
Oh dear.
Or I think I did. I actually have 2 more. As you guys walked through those initial, first couple days, first, weeks, a month of losing your spouse, what was the one line that was just the most, what's the right word here? Not funny, but what was the worst thing that someone trying to encourage you said? Is there any that really sticks out?
I don't know that a line did, but there were a lot of people that tried to help by giving me books written by cancer survivors. Dave Dravecki lost it, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it just, for me, it was the knowledge that these are all people that survived cancer. and my wife is not going to survive this. This is terminal. We kind of know. In fact, the doctors actually did us a favor because when she decided not to do like her third course of chemo or so, we said, well, how long is it going to be? And then he told us, 3 weeks with, 3 weeks out. I remember people getting upset like her sisters that I can't believe he told you that. But we were able to do a Christmas at, the 1st of December. And a good friend in our church got a whole bunch of people in the community together. She knew them from being a banker. Everybody in town knew Marilyn. Yep. And, brought a whole bunch of people to carol on our porch, give us a little Christmas tree, which we've still got to this day with a whole bunch of handmade ornaments and signed ornaments. And so we celebrated that like December 1st, and she died December 18th. So we wouldn't have made it to Christmas.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was people trying to do the best thing and with these books, but it just, I'm like, I really don't have anything to hang on because that stuff has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Now, I was able to give some of those away to some later people that had some cancer that was survivable. So it wasn't like they went unused. Yeah. They just didn't have an application to us. It was difficult.
I don't really remember anything too terribly negative that anyone said to me, but there's a slew of wrong things to say. And one year, Tom and I had a weekend with the author, and about 20 widows came, and they stayed at a hotel, but we had them over to our place for a Christmas party. It was near Christmas time. And there was a song that one of the widows groups, a secular group, they had just put out, and just the words, anybody can sing it. It's the 12 Days of Christmas. And so we sang that because it just made a parody of what not to say. And I can't remember all of them, but like the first day my husband died, someone said to me, "You're young, you'll get married again." And it just went through like that. And number five, the 5 golden rings, was time to move on. And it was 12 things that everybody could relate to. And the ladies sang that. They had tears of laughter, tears of reality, relief, that we can laugh about some of this stuff. And I myself, I've probably said terrible things to people too.
Yeah.
Well, what we found too with a lot of the widows is their social structure, whether it be church or outside of church. In a lot of cases, they're close with families, but it's the guys that are the buddies. They like football. We get together, we do a barbecue, and the families get together. So when they lose their husband, they lose a lot of their social structure. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, the married wives don't want the widow around their husbands. And even in a church atmosphere.
I never thought about that.
Yeah. And wow. It really, they lose a lot more than a guy loses when they lose a husband,
So it ostracizes her even more so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some women are very insecure and
wow.
Yeah. So it's very
more so
sad.
Probably for the younger widows, but yeah, it's just.
I mean, I even had one younger widow at the very beginning years ago. She had been the church secretary, and she's widowed, and she lost her job because they didn't want the pastor working for an unmarried woman.
Working with an unmarried woman, yeah.
Which kind of, it makes sense, but they needed to deal with it a different way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a one line or a single piece of encouragement that you guys would share to someone who has a sister or a brother or a friend who all of a sudden finds themselves in that situation?
One thing that I've talked about a lot in the articles in Plain Values is the ministry of presence. And if you are not present in someone's company, you're not going to be able to help them. First off, there are no words that can fix this. So give it up. Quit looking. Don't worry about words. Just be there. Be a friend. Continue to be a friend and say the name of the loved one who is gone. Say their name, please.
Can I ask why? What does that do?
What that does is helps the person know that they're not forgotten and that they meant something.
I think it legitimizes their life with that person, because we try to tell them with the grief share that the grief is it's never going to go away. People want to tell you that somewhere along the line this journey is going to end, or you're going to get there, or get over it, and that loss and that grief never goes away. It's just under the surface, and it's just like a car accident waiting to happen out of the blue. Somebody will say something. We came back to Ticonderoga, my hometown, and I ran into issues where, there's a lot of places that trigger memories of Maryland. That was where, I was married to her until I was 42. And just something will trigger those things out of the blue. And it's all right to cry about that and to grieve about that. Because it also it legitimizes that relationship and that life you had with that person. You're not trying to tuck that away, forget about it. And unfortunately, a lot of people are sort of encouraged to do that. I mean, that's kind of, we talked about early on. We're going to talk about our spouses without a problem. We don't hide that. That's
Wow.
I ask questions about how Bruce would handle this and what he did, and she does the same. It's just, and it's interesting to actually learn about someone or meet somebody through, her eyes and her relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So,
guys, this has been so stinking good. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Like I said, I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Thank you.
And we will have to do it again. We will just have to keep it up.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
And we enjoy coming this area. I enjoy her ministry, especially with the Amish and the Mennonites. It has been very eye-opening and something I appreciate because of kind of the simpler, seemingly, I'm sure they've got their own set of problems and piled on that, you've shared some personal stuff there, but it's just it really is a vacation that you can relax with people that love the Lord and live a much more simple life than what's going on. And it's been unique. The Lord's kind of prepped her from years ago when she wrote for the newspapers when she lived in Central Ohio, and kind of connected with the Amish community. And then through your magazine, it's been, just amazing to be able to have her speak at different Amish widows and Mennonite church. And the Mennonite church there in Apple Creek there, she came back going, man, I'd join that church in a minute.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live 700 miles away, But
hard to do on a Sunday morning. Yeah, a little bit. Where can folks find your book and your site?
It is at widowschristianpath.com.
Okay.
I do not sell on Amazon, but you can get my book there. I also, once or twice a year, I do Zoom groups, 7-week groups, and we go through the book. They love it. I keep the groups small and intimate, and they become such good friends. And if you read my book as a widow, I can guarantee that you will see progress. I just absolutely guarantee it. If you don't, I'll give you your money back. But it's a good thing.
Yeah,
it's so good. God is so good.
It is a beautiful book, and it's, you have been a blessing to a lot of folks.
There
So,
is
thank you.
life. There is life after death.
Yeah. Seems like
many
we've heard that
ways.
somewhere else. I'm not sure. Yeah.
In many ways.
Guys, thank you.
Yeah, thank
I so
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
My wife loves Jill Winger's Old Fashioned on Purpose planner, and this year's is better than ever. It has all sorts of tabs, from your gardens to your animals to your meals. Anything and everything that you can imagine that needs planning, Jill has built a spot for it in here. You can find this at homesteadliving.com. Order yours today for 2026.
So hold my hand.
In his book, Rembrandt is in the Wind, Russ Ramsey says that the Bible is the story of the God of the universe telling his people to care for the sojourner, the poor, the orphan, and the widow. And it's the story of his people struggling to find the humility to carry out that holy calling. Guys, that is what Plain Values is all about. If you got anything out of this podcast, you will probably love Plain Values in print. You can go to plainvalues.com to learn more and check it out. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Guys, love you all. Thanks so much.